There is a version of you that you have never met, a version that lives beneath the surface of your conscious mind, and this hidden version has been making decisions for you your entire life without your permission. It has been choosing your relationships, shaping your fears, dictating your reactions, and steering you away from the very things you say you want most, and the most unsettling part is that you have no idea it is happening. Carl Jung called this hidden version the shadow, and he believed it contains everything we have rejected, repressed, or denied about ourselves, everything we were told was unacceptable, shameful, or too dangerous to express. And instead of disappearing, these rejected parts simply go underground, where they continue to influence our behavior from the shadows. Today I want to show you 3 ways your shadow self has been ruining your life without you knowing, and the second one will completely change how you see yourself. But before we get there, we need to understand what the shadow actually is and why it has so much power over you. Jung wrote that the shadow is the dark side of our personality that we refuse to acknowledge, and he warned that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate, which means your shadow is not some distant psychological concept. It is the reason you keep repeating the same painful patterns, the reason you attract the same kind of people, the reason you sabotage your own success, and the reason you feel like something is holding you back even when everything looks fine on the outside. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to understand, and that understanding begins with recognizing the 3 most common ways the shadow operates in your daily life. The first way your shadow self ruins your life without you knowing is through unconscious projection. Projection is a psychological mechanism where we take the qualities we cannot accept in ourselves and attribute them to others. Jung described projection as one of the most common ways the shadow operates, and it happens every single day without your awareness. For example, have you ever met someone and immediately felt irritated by them for no clear reason? Perhaps they seemed arrogant, selfish, or manipulative, and you could not quite explain why their presence bothered you so much. What if I told you that irritation was not really about them at all? Jung believed that what we judge most harshly in others is often a reflection of what we secretly judge in ourselves. The qualities we despise in other people are frequently the very qualities we have disowned within ourselves. So when you feel a strong negative reaction to someone, it is worth asking yourself, is this really about them or is this about something I have refused to see in myself? This is why projection is so dangerous, because it blinds you to your own flaws while making you obsessed with the flaws of others. You may spend years criticizing people for being selfish while never noticing that you have been neglecting your own needs in the exact same way. You may judge others for being weak while ignoring the ways you have avoided vulnerability. You may condemn others for being dishonest while conveniently overlooking the lies you tell yourself to stay comfortable. And here is the most painful part. Projection destroys relationships because you are constantly fighting enemies that exist only in your own mind. You push people away for qualities that belong to you. You create conflict over issues that are really about your own internal struggle, and you remain stuck in a cycle of blame and resentment while your shadow quietly continues to run the show. This brings us to the second way your shadow self ruins your life, and this one may shock you because it explains why you keep repeating the same painful patterns no matter how hard you try to change. The shadow sabotages you by keeping you emotionally addicted to familiar pain. Jung observed that the unconscious mind is drawn to what is familiar, even when what is familiar is painful, which means your shadow will unconsciously recreate situations that mirror old wounds because that is what your psyche knows how to navigate. This is why people who grew up with emotionally unavailable parents often find themselves repeatedly attracted to emotionally unavailable partners. It is not because they enjoy the pain, it is because that pain is familiar, and the nervous system interprets familiar as safe, even when it is destructive. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever noticed that you tend to fall for the same type of person over and over again? Or that you keep ending up in the same kind of conflict? Or that you have a pattern of leaving situations just when they start to feel stable. These are not coincidences, they are the shadow self orchestrating a familiar emotional environment because it does not know how to function in peace. The shadow was formed in chaos, so chaos feels like home. The shadow learns survival strategies in rejection, so rejection feels predictable, and predictable pain is easier to tolerate than unpredictable peace. This is the shocking truth that most people never realize: you are not unlucky in love. You are not cursed, you are not broken. Your shadow is simply recreating the conditions it knows how to survive in, and until you bring this pattern into conscious awareness, it will continue to run your life. You will keep choosing partners who cannot meet your needs. You will keep leaving good relationships for no logical reason. You will keep sabotaging your own happiness because happiness feels foreign and foreign feels threatening. And this is exactly why understanding your shadow is not just interesting psychology, it is essential for your survival and your freedom. The third way your shadow self ruins your life without you knowing is through self-sabotage disguised as self-protection. This is the most deceptive of all because it looks like you are making wise decisions when in reality you are running from your own potential. Jung believed that the shadow often operates by convincing us that our fears are rational and our limitations are realistic. So when you decide not to pursue a dream because you are being practical, when you avoid a relationship because you are being careful, when you stay in a job you hate because you are being responsible, you may actually be letting your shadow self keep you small. The shadow is terrified of your growth because growth threatens the identity it has carefully constructed. If you become successful, the shadow loses its power because you no longer need its protection. If you find love, the shadow loses its grip because you no longer believe you are unlovable. If you achieve your goals, the shadow loses its purpose because you no longer require its fear-based guidance. So the shadow will do everything in its power to keep you safe, which means keeping you stagnant. It will whisper that you are not ready, that the timing is wrong, that you do not have enough experience, that you will fail and embarrass yourself. And because these thoughts feel so reasonable, you listen, you hold back, you play it safe, and you convince yourself that you are making the wise choice. But here is the truth: the wise choice is rarely the safe choice. Safety does not lead to growth, growth requires risk, and risk requires you to confront the shadow directly. Jung wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and that is exactly what you are being asked to do. To accept the parts of yourself that are afraid, the parts that are ashamed, the parts that doubt, and the parts that long for something more. And when you do that, the shadow loses its power because it can no longer hide in the darkness of your unconscious mind. So what do you do when you realize that your shadow self has been ruining your life? The first step is not to fight it, because fighting the shadow only makes it stronger. Jung taught that we must integrate the shadow, not destroy it, and integration begins with acknowledgement. You simply name it. You say to yourself, that is my shadow talking, that is fear, that is the pattern I learned in childhood, and just naming it begins to break its power because you are no longer identified with it. The second step is to practice self-compassion, because the shadow is not evil, it was created to protect you. It developed strategies to help you survive environments that were not safe, and it has been doing its best with the tools it had. You do not need to hate your shadow, you need to understand it and thank it for trying to protect you, and then you need to gently tell it that you are safe now, that you do not need those old strategies anymore. The third step is to take action that your shadow resists, because the shadow grows stronger when you avoid discomfort, and it weakens when you move through fear. This means doing the thing that scares you, having the difficult conversation, applying for the job, ending the toxic relationship, starting the project. And every time you act despite your shadow's warnings, you reclaim a piece of your power. You show your unconscious mind that you are capable of more than it believed. You expand your identity and your capacity for joy, success, and love. Jung believed that the goal of life is individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of ourselves, and individuation requires you to face the shadow directly. not to eliminate it, but to bring it into the light where it can serve you instead of control you. And when you do that, everything changes. You stop being your own worst enemy and you start becoming your own greatest ally. You stop repeating painful patterns and you start creating the life you actually want. You stop running from love and you start receiving it fully. You stop hiding your gifts and you start sharing them with the world. And this is the true meaning of freedom. Not freedom from fear, but freedom from being controlled by fear, not freedom from the shadow, but freedom to integrate it and use its energy for your growth, not freedom from your past, but freedom to move forward with clarity and purpose, while also recognizing that ultimate guidance and strength come from God. So I want to leave you with a question. What would your life look like if your shadow was no longer running the show? What would you do if you were not afraid? Who would you become if you stopped hiding? I cannot answer that for you, but I can tell you this: the version of you that has been hiding in the shadows is not your enemy, it is your teacher, and when you are ready to listen, it will show you exactly what you need to heal, and that is the beginning of real transformation. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who might be fighting their own shadow. Sometimes the right words at the right time can change everything. And if you are ready to continue this journey of self-discovery, subscribe to Winds of Thought and turn on notifications, because the deepest truths about ourselves are rarely found in the light. They are revealed when we have the courage to face the darkness within.